Welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever paused and actually wondered how a massive, incredibly diverse democracy functions without just falling apart? It's basically the ultimate group project, and somehow it actually works. Managing millions of people across completely different cultures and geographies requires a truly masterful system. So today, we are decoding that exact system, federalism.
All right, let's jump right in. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the power sharing puzzle, cover the rules of the federal game, look at dividing power in India, explore power to the people, and wrap up with why federalism actually matters.
Starting with Section 1, the power sharing puzzle.
Think about it. The absolute core challenge of any large society is managing an incredibly diverse population without concentrating so much authority that you accidentally create a dictatorship, right? Well, the solution is federalism. Put simply, it's a system of government where power is divided between a central authority and various regional governments. In India, for example, that means the union government at the center and the state governments regionally. And the vital thing to grasp here is that both levels have their own completely independent powers. The regional governments aren't just subordinates taking orders, they have their own constitutionally protected domains.
A really great way to grasp federalism is to look at exactly what it isn't. In a federal system, powers are divided, states have real autonomy, and the Constitution itself protects that division. Now contrast that with a unitary government. There, power is heavily centralized. The states or provinces depend entirely on the center, and that central authority is frankly overwhelmingly stronger. It's kind of like a strict landlord dictating every single rule to the tenants. But in a federal system, the deck is fundamentally shared. It's more like co-owners managing a massive building together.
Moving on to Section 2, rules of the federal game.
Okay, so now that we know what federalism is, how do we make sure everyone actually plays fair? Well, we rely on safeguards. You absolutely need 2 or more levels of government with constitutionally defined powers. One level literally cannot just swoop in and take away the powers of another because of the supremacy of the Constitution. It's the ultimate rulebook. Plus, to act as a referee, you need an independent judiciary, like a Supreme Court, to settle any disputes between the center and the states. And finally, separate sources of revenue. Because let's be real, political independence is just a total illusion if you don't have the cash to fund your own operations. Globally, we see countries applying these rules in 2 very distinct ways. First up, you have the Coming Together Federation. This is where independent states voluntarily unite to form a larger nation, usually keeping equal powers. Think of the US, Switzerland, or Australia. But then, on the flip side, there's the Holding Together Federation. This is where a large already existing country deliberately divides power between a strong center and its states to accommodate all its diversity. India, Belgium, and Spain, they all use this model. India uses this holding together approach specifically to manage its vast, incredible diversity, while making sure the central government stays strong enough to keep the whole nation unified.
Which brings us to Section 3, dividing power in India.
Let's zoom in on India for a second. We can see exactly how a holding together federation practically shares power on a day-to-day basis. Here, the Indian Constitution acts as the ultimate referee, literally dividing the powers of government into 3 distinct lists. And this setup brilliantly illustrates how such a complex nation is managed. First, you have the Union List. This handles subjects strictly for the central government, things that absolutely require a uniform national approach, like defense, foreign affairs, and currency. You definitely do not want each state printing its own money, right? Then we have the State List. These subjects are handled solely by state governments, local, everyday issues like police, agriculture, and public health. And finally, the Concurrent List. This contains subjects where both the center and states can make laws. Think education, forests, trade unions, because obviously both levels of government have a massive vested interest in these areas. But wait, looking at that shared concurrent list should probably raise a pretty huge question in your mind. What exactly happens when both the center and a state decide to make a law about, say, education, and those 2 laws directly contradict each other? Who actually wins? Well, remember how we established that India is a holding together federation with a strong center? This is exactly where that shows up. If a conflict occurs on that concurrent list, the central law usually prevails, period. And what about totally new subjects that didn't even exist when the Constitution was drafted? Things like computer software? Those unlisted residuary powers go straight to the central government. But look, sharing power isn't just about drafting laws. It's fundamentally about respecting diversity. The Indian framework uses specific policies as vital pressure valves. For instance, to manage its incredibly diverse cultures, the Constitution doesn't impose a single national language. Nope. While Hindi is used for official union purposes, English is also heavily used to accommodate non-Hindi speaking states. And when political or jurisdictional tensions do inevitably bubble up, the independent Supreme Court steps right in to peacefully settle those center-state disputes. The entire machine is engineered to maintain national unity.
All right, Section 4, Power to the People.
Because true power sharing cannot just stop at the state level, and that brings us to decentralization. This is the transfer of power to lower levels of government, bringing it way closer to the people. The logic here is super simple. Local communities understand their own potholes, their own garbage collection, their own neighborhood problems far, far better than a distant capital city ever could.
Now, this grassroots power, it didn't just happen overnight. Right after independence, there was some pretty heavy central government dominance. But over time, the rise of coalition governments meant the center actually had to start relying on regional parties, which gave states a much stronger role. The absolute defining moment, though, happened with the 1992 constitutional amendments. That completely changed the game by permanently creating a third localized tier of federalism. Those 1992 amendments drastically improved local participation by creating specialized tiers of grassroots democracy. For rural areas, we have the Panchayati Raj System that flows from the Gram Panchayat right at the village level up to the Panchayat Samiti, and finally to the Zila Parishad at the district level. Urban areas, on the flip side, are governed by municipalities in smaller towns and larger municipal corporations in the big cities. It is a highly structured, brilliant way to ensure everyday citizens have direct, tangible access to self-governance. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Why Federalism Matters. So why is this incredibly complex, giant structural puzzle worth all the effort? Look, we have to acknowledge that the system is not perfectly frictionless. It's not. Federalism is constantly managing some really significant challenges. We're talking disputes between states over river water sharing, deeply rooted language conflicts, and stark financial imbalances between different regions. But the true beauty of federalism isn't that it magically prevents these challenges from existing. It's that it provides a peaceful, institutional framework to handle these issues through negotiation and law, rather than through outright conflict. So here is the ultimate takeaway. Federalism is literally the engine of a diverse democracy. It actively protects regional interests so minority voices aren't just lost in the crowd. It encourages active citizen participation. And honestly, most importantly, it prevents a dangerous concentration of power. The very division of power is exactly the glue that keeps a massive, diverse country unified. Which leaves us with this final, profound thought to consider. If absolute power corrupts absolutely, is sharing power the ultimate secret to a thriving, unified democracy? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this breakdown helps you better understand exactly how the power all around you is balanced and shared every single day. So, go look into your own local systems, keep learning, and keep decoding the world around you.